while they were on top of that blowout when they were trying to get a handle on it. I don't know if those reports are true, but let's just say something obviously occurred there that was not anticipated. Something happened though months after that when they were drilling, and I'm not sure if it was months at this time. There was a droning, almost like a noise you would hear in your inner ear, but you're not sure if you're actually hearing it or feeling the sensation. Now, I have no idea if that was caused by the drilling that occurred after the blowout, but it sure seemed like it was coming from that direction. Now, that was really terrible to experience, and if that is a normal part of the geothermal production process, maybe that hasn't been looked into enough, you know, and I know it might sound kind of strange, but it wasn't no alien craft or anything. There was something going on that was creating some sort of resonant frequency that was actually pretty disturbing. You know, it kind of almost felt like it could throw your balance off, but it was more of a nuisance. So I wish James was here to hear that. I was actually there present on the land. Other than that, I would hope that this council would have this, being it's a communication and you're just going to file it, I would hope that this council would somehow bring this matter back in front of the public again. I'm very concerned, and as I said, I'm not anti-geothermal, but my comments previously, times testifying here, were based on that it was going to be a rational further development of the geothermal resource. And I'm very concerned that now it seems like it's expanded into like the quick fix, easy answer for our energy problem here. And that really concerns me, this gross expansion that has occurred only recently without possibly enough public information out there. So I appreciate everybody coming forward and giving their education here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Okay, anyone else before we finish the public testimony portion of the agenda? I don't see or hear anyone. Okay. Council members, any questions? Mr. Yagan?
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest, I know we do have one more presentation, and I would suggest that we would do the presentation before we open up the floor to discussion from the council members.
Okay. Mr. Hoffman, comment? You're looking at me like you want to say something. Go.
6 and 1/2 dozen of the other. I think we have to give both good credence, and if we want to finish this topic first and go to the next, that's fine, but I leave that to you.
Okay. Well, you know, we do have a pending motion now. We would have to...
I have a comment, sir.
Mr. Pelago.
Just a reminder that the motion is to file communication 646. Communication 651 is not on the floor. And I believe we need to dispense with 646 and closing its file at present.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pelago. It seems like we have consensus to finish communication 646 as well here. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Ms. Ford, did you want to start us in any questions or discussion?
I can.
Okay.
I'd like to have Mr. Ignacio come forward, please. Mr. Ignacio, I'm going to retread some of this old ground. You've talked about the industry standard of 15% being the threshold where studies need to be done. And I, you know, in my ignorance of electricity and its production and all of those things, I need to ask some questions. Why 15%? Why not 20 or 25%? And I really don't care what the industry standard is. I care about what we're doing here. Because we're not part of the grid on the mainland. We can't get electricity from any place else. So why 15%?
Okay, for this particular issue, it occurs on the distribution system. So even if we're not an interconnected grid like on the mainland, the same issues apply whether we're here or whether on the mainland. And the reason why it's 15% is because that is the threshold where you can start to see these issues arise. The voltage fluctuations, the potential islanding. So it is at that point to ensure public safety and protection of customer equipment. That's the threshold that we use in order to start these steps.
So if we know that we start to have fluctuations at the 15% threshold, what does HELCO need to do to beef up their system to get us up to a 25% threshold?
We would look at the particular situation because it's also location dependent. Whether the PV system is located close to the substation or all the way at the end, you could have a large installation at the end with no customers adjacent, or you can have a large installation at the end with many customers installed. So it depends on each particular situation. In these studies, oftentimes we have to model the entire distribution circuit in order to do the evaluation.
All right. When you reach the 15% threshold and somebody comes up and says, I want to add a PV system on my home, okay, and you say, oh, we got to do this study. Is the study in fact $500 paid by that person?
No. I've seen a letter to the editor that used the $500 figure, and I've heard it testified here this afternoon. The studies actually can cost more than $500. It can cost in the order of $15,000. And that's where we get a lot of frustration from installers, because their system may be, proposed to be only $20,000, and then here we're requesting $15,000 study. That leads to a lot of frustration.
Well, those of us on this council represent a lot of angry consumers of electricity, and so I'm a little concerned about that. So every new person who comes on with a PV system that in an area that has hit the 15% threshold is going to have to pay maybe up to $15,000.
Yeah, what we try to do, we understand that if an individual comes in and they're trying to put in a PV system and they don't have the funds to fund the study, then what we try to do is we try to collect maybe several other applicants and share the cost of the study and mitigate the impact of the cost of the study.
Okay, that sounds, superficially, that sounds reasonable, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. But it seems to me if you're going to do a circuit on an area, a study on a circuit that's going to a particular area that's at the 15%, it seems to me the study should be robust enough to be able to handle more than 1 or 2 or 5 or even 10 people. The study should be robust enough to handle maybe 100 new systems. And so I look at this and I think, it doesn't seem reasonable or practical to me for either HELCO or the community that has maybe reached a 15% penetration rate to do some kind of a study and not be able to put on another block of people and get them up above that threshold. And so I have to ask, why are you doing a study that you can't put at least 100 new systems on it? Why aren't your studies robust enough to be able to handle a larger group of people?
Yeah. These issues, we're in discussion with the Public Utilities Commission. This is the process that we developed through a long docket before the Public Utilities Commission. One of the proposals which I prefer is that rather than the person who triggers the threshold now has the burden of the study, is rather to have contribution into a common fund so that the utility can do studies on an ongoing basis in anticipation of hitting the threshold like you're proposing. However, that alternate process is not approved by the Public Utilities Commission. The current process is approved by the Public Utilities Commission.
Mr. Ignacio, what percentage of your net profits does HELCO pay to their shareholders?
I don't have that exact figure, but we do pay dividends to our parent company, Hawaiian Electric Company.
Don't you pay your shareholders about 107% of your net profits?
The question was, what does HELCO pay? And we don't pay more than our profits to Hawaiian Electric Company.
So you pay out 100%?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't pay 100% of our net profits.
Can you give us an estimate? I'm digging here and I'm not getting any answers.
I would say in the order of 60% of our net profits, but please don't use the number as an example.
I understand. Now, when you get back to the parent company, what are they paying out? Because there was a time they were paying out 107% of their net profits.
I don't have those figures right offhand.
Is it over 100%?
At one point it was. I'm not sure if that was specific.
Okay, well, I'm not comfortable with the answer. You can't tell us. Because my question is, why are we charging people who are trying to put photovoltaics or any other type of system onto their homes and their businesses if the parent company is paying out that much of their net profits, not their gross, but their net profits, anything in excess of 100% to me is unreasonable. I don't run your company. I don't run the PUC, but I am representing, along with the other council members, people who out in the community who are trying to get their utility bills under control and cannot because of this artificial 15% threshold.
Okay, as I explained, it's not an artificial, arbitrary threshold. It's an industry standard that we have adopted. The process of doing studies and actually charging applicants for the cost of the studies is a process that was vetted before the Public Utilities Commission and approved by the Public Utilities Commission. We don't have the authority to deviate from that process unilaterally. So it is a process that has been adopted by our regulators, the Public Utilities Commission. I think the interest there is that although there's a lot of attention to photovoltaic installations, it still represents a small percentage of our customers. It's still below 5% of our customers. And I think the thinking there with the Public Utilities Commission is, would it be unfair for all of the other customers to fund the process for a small percentage of our customers?
Oh, we're back to what the newspaper said, that, you guys are wanting some kind of reimbursement for the people who are putting photovoltaics onto your network. That doesn't sound real good.
That's what I said earlier, was that we filed a report with the Public Utilities Commission that indicated what was the reduction in sales related to the energy metering. That's a report required by the Public Utilities Commission. It is not a rate increase request.
But you're sitting here today and saying that it's not fair to the 95%, the 5%.
What I said to you today was that we went through a process that was approved by the Public Utilities Commission. And the process has the applicant pay for the study, not all customers. And I explained to you, I think the interest behind that is that because it's a small number of customers, the interest is that not all customers pay for the interest and benefit for a small number of customers.
Mr. Ignacio, has HELCO or the parent company gone before the PUC and said that this process needs to change?
We have gone through the process, and it was approved by the Public Utilities Commission. I believe in the winter of this year, we're going to go back and review the status of the process. But I think that's for the feed-in tariff, but these issues are related to the feed-in tariff process as well. I believe at that time, all of these issues, concerns being raised with respect to cost of studies, delays are going to be better in that process.
Okay. I'm not getting answers that I really need for the public, therefore I'm going to yield.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ford. I'm going to take Mr. Ikeda next, and then Mr. Palazzo will check in with you right after Mr. Ikeda.
Good afternoon.
I got a very simple question. I'm a selfish person. So if we buy more geothermal power, will our rates go down?
That reducing the rates and mitigating the price impacts of rising food prices is a big part of our driver to add more renewable. The exact amount depends on how much we require onto the system. But in comparison, if we pay independent power producers today in the order of 21 cents, some estimates of geothermal can be in the order of 10 cents. I think 10 cents is a little optimistic, but it's still, even if we get 12, 13, 14, 15 cents, that's still less than 21 cents. And that's the interest that we want to pursue to reduce the rates of our customers.
So you're saying indirectly it will go down?
If we get it at the right price, it will go down, yes.
Because I have everything based on oil, so I was hoping that with the geothermal, we could have a new contract where it's not based on oil, so the price might go down.
Yeah, what we have done with the additional 8 megawatts from PGD, that additional 8 megawatts and 5 megawatts of the original contract have been decoupled from the price of oil. So we can have at least that benefit. When we have the contract with Fuhonua, that also will be de-linked from the price of oil. So we're working toward a system where 100% of our energy eventually becomes de-linked from the price of oil.
excluded from the price of oil?
Yes, we don't want to be dependent on the price of oil.
That's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ikeda. Mr. Palago, do you have any questions or comments?
Some comments very briefly, sir. I would like to take this time to thank President Ignacio for his presentation of HELCO. What his presentation does show us, and one in which we will file, does show us is that the real question falls and responsibility falls on this council. For example, this council is responsible for the health and welfare of its citizens, one of which that comes up repeatedly in this discussion is the need for health screenings. So this council and my committee especially is responsible to follow through with discussions by bringing in Civil Defense, Fire Department, Department of Health, county, state, and federal overseers and monitors, because we need to look at what are the monitoring devices show, what are birth rates, defects, what are the difficulties in education problems, both physically, psychologically, physiologically, for all of our citizens. And it's this council and my committee's responsibility to further that type of discussion. What's also very important is I see in here, in terms of technical aspects in power generation, geothermal power generation, is that the acquisition of heat, the acquiring of heat, geothermal heat, is only one part of the formula. Added on to that is we need water. We need water to create steam so we can drive the turbines. And certainly the expansion of the plant needs to be somewhere more suitable and not where it is now. But that's something I see that may be within the purview of the Agriculture, Water, and Energy Sustainability Committee. And where is the water going to be coming from? I also see as part of the responsibility of this county council in the Committee on Environment, because part of the exploratory initiatives that go through would call for fracturing or hydrofracturing, and that's the breaking of the caprock in order to access or in order to determine how feasible the power generation sources may be. Again, my committee is charged to look at the health and safety and welfare of our community. So far, I have no data, and we all need to find out what do the monitoring devices show, what are the evacuation plans should there be an emergency. If there is an emergency, what are the first responses that we will initiate, and what role will civil defense play, fire department, or police play? They're not part of the discussions, and I think it's our responsibility to call them into this discussion. And we also need to reach out, not only our responsibility, but we need to call on the state and federal government. What do their monitoring and oversight procedures and protocols entail? And how is it that we play a role in, again, protecting the health and quality of life for our citizens? I thank Mr. Ignacio again, and you, Mr. Chair Yoshimoto, for bringing this item here for discussion today. But this is only the beginning. We need to take on bigger issues and bigger roles in making sure the health and welfare of our citizens are taken care of. That is a paramount issue for the county council to undertake. I just wanted to share that with everyone, and the need that I feel and the responsibility I've come to find out and learn out of today's discussion. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Palago. Okay, Ms. Smart, followed by Mr. Hunt.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to respond to some of the comments that Mr. Palago stated. I just went to a rural health meeting last week, and they actually had two really good speakers talking about the health effects of fog, and they've actually studied the air, the acidity, the gases, where the particles are found versus where the gases are found, and they've mapped it out. So with that, Mr. Palago, we can get in contact with you and schedule that onto a future committee. I'd also like the public to know that there is a VOG task force that is specifically studying the effects of VOG, and they specifically want to hear from members of the public. We've had two organizational meetings, and then we had a public meeting ground in Pahala, where members of the public were able to come forward, ask questions, find response, and get back to you. The next one is scheduled in Pahoa, I believe. I'm trying to pull it up on the calendar. I know it's in June, but our network is slow, so I'm not able to pull up what exact date it is. But I would encourage all of you that are experiencing those to come forward, give us your testimony. That is the whole point of this task force. Secondly, I want to shift gears a little bit. Mr. Ignacio, there was some pretty drastic legislation going through the state this year, and the one that I'm thinking of specifically has to do with Denny Kaufman's bill, where they want to, I know it's deferred right now, but I want to hear your comments on the effects that it would have. Basically, they were going to, please correct me if I'm wrong, take away the power generation capabilities from HEI and only allow you to have ownership of the transmission of power. Please correct me if I'm wrong, and also your comments on what effect that would have on our electricity, because to me it would sound like that would allow more alternative energy to be accepted in, because we wouldn't be having to rely on that base load. But maybe I'm misunderstanding the whole implications there. But I do want to give you an opportunity to speak on that.
I think if we were to adopt that model, we would have to do it very carefully. The power grid needs to be managed in a very calculated fashion. What I said earlier is, here at HELCO, we're looking at adding on more geothermal and even anticipating possible retirements of our own units. But some of our own units that we're looking at retiring, they've provided grid management services. So if we just pass legislation callously and said, just dispel with all of the existing units, we may not be able to manage a system, even with a very good independent operator. That kind of approach and decision has to be done here.
Thank you. I also have a question. This has to do with a specific project I know of going in Pahala, but I do believe other alternative energies could be using the same example. And I know there's a hydroelectricity being proposed for Pahala, where they could power half of the town. However, I believe it's my understanding that if they were to do that, HELCO would require them to upgrade the infrastructure in order to do so. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, why that company would have to upgrade the infrastructure that's there in order for them to service the electricity right in the area it's being generated versus selling it back to HELCO and then sending it back.
There's a hydro facility proposed in actually in Pahala. It is away from the existing grid, so it would require building a new pole line to tie in the hydro facility onto the grid. And then once it's tied into the grid, it would require upgrading parts of the existing grid. That is the cost associated with interconnecting that facility. And the same type of analysis that I talked about earlier, where you have a high penetration of photovoltaic, that kind of analysis has to be done in tying in a hydro facility of that size to the distribution system.
Okay, thank you. The reason I'm asking, because it seems, especially when we're going on the comment of don't put all your eggs in one basket, that it would make sense for power being generated in one area that could power that same area. It would make sense to me, well, I'm obviously not in the industry, to be able to use the existing infrastructure to do that. So what I'm hearing from you is that it's the interconnectivity that's at issue and why the upgrades would be required. Am I repeating that back to you accurately?
Well, it's, the hydro being proposed is at a location where you don't have any facilities. So we would need to build new facilities to tie it into the existing grid. Once you tie into the existing grid, then we're going to have to do some upgrades to the existing grid. And then you have to look at that interconnection cost, look at what the power production and the revenue stream from the hydro facility will be, and then see if it's economical for the developer to proceed.
So what you're saying is they're not having to replace all the old infrastructure just because you want them to. It is that you would have to build new infrastructure in order for them to use it in that area, because there's nothing there right now where the plant is.
It's a combination of new infrastructure and upgrading existing parts of the existing.
Okay. Well, I just want to reiterate to the public, please come to the BOG Task Force meeting. That is a forum that was established specifically to hear from members of the public. If you have questions, the whole point of the task force is to be able to come back to you with answers. We won't have the answers there, but it is a dialogue between task force members and the members of the public. So it is in June. I'm sorry my connection isn't able to give me the date. Please talk to your council member. If you're in Puna, Mr. Bloss is a member of the task force. I'm a member of the task force. Give us a call. We'll give you the date, and please come to the meetings. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Smart. Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay, I must admit, representing the North and South Kohala area, the reputation of HELCO at the moment probably has even sunk below that of politicians, lawyers, and others on the recognition chain. So I can't begin to tell you the number of complaints that I have received from people in Waikoloa and Waimea, reference service and a number of different things regarding particularly the recent press, of course, that you've received. Look, I recognize that much of this, or some of this anyway, is the factor of where we are with our economic situation at the moment. But I haven't heard much from you or anyone else today, I think, that tells me what you're going to do to sort of set a different pace or be proactive in reestablishing the credibility for the people that we represent and that you serve. I recognize that as a public utility, you're sort of in, of course, a monopolistic type situation. There ain't anybody out there doing this. But what can you do, and how will you work with us and with the county administration to change those parameters and the situation that we're faced with today? And what do you recommend right now? I understand PUC is one thing. We got some things over here we got to take care of. What do you do as CEO of HELCO?
As I stated earlier, our biggest challenge right now is being dependent on the price of oil. And our focus is looking at new sources of generation that will take us off of that dependence. So things like we're doing with this geothermal RFP is one of our primary things. That's something we're doing at the risk of retiring our own units. We get criticized saying we're blocking all of these renewable energy efforts, and we're not. We feel the pain of our customers. We are seeing what they go through, right? And it's really that dependence on oil that we have to attack. And seriously, I'm not talking about attacking. That's why we're looking at the geothermal RFP that can retire our power plants. We're looking at signing a agreement for biomass that will retire one of our power plants. So we are aggressively pursuing renewable energy options that will reduce this dependence on oil. That's the primary burden that all of our customers are feeling right now.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to belabor this any longer. I've been a resident of this island for 15 years. And Jay, I've got to tell you that when I first came here in 1997, I heard the same thing from HELCO about being overly dependent upon oil. We haven't changed much. And we, all of us, regardless of where we are, I'm sorry. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm much more sympathetic to the complaints of the people of my district and island-wide when I hear the same litany of things that we're going to change year in and year out, and we make very, very little progress. And if you do feel the pain for the people, please hear their cries for support, help, and assistance. You and HELCO, as well as your sister utilities on the other islands, could form a HEI that would change the parameters of how electric use is distributed and paid for throughout the state if you attack the PUC. And I think you've got to work together on our behalf. I'm not going to go any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Yagon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jay, for your presentation. Also look forward to the next presentation that's coming up. council members, I know we're here to receive information and so forth, but I think we all, I know we already had a realization, but but with today's testimony, obviously, we do know that this is going to be and will continue to be a very important and hot topic for this side. There's no question. And when you talk about the Governor Lingo declaring that we want to be 70% renewable energy by the year 2030, that's one thing. But when you hear the administration today say that we want to be 100% renewable by the year 2015, and yet we can't even get over the threshold of 15% for our photovoltaic. I mean, it's, those types of comments, I think, is not only unrealistic, but I think it's misleading, and I think it creates chaos. And that's when you have people wondering what's really going on here. What's happening behind closed doors. And of course, the governor also came forward and talked about 1,000 megawatt plant, and underground cable. And, then you wonder why people are getting excited. I mean, we are creating this problem. We are creating this problem simply because, like Mr. Patrici said, that, we need to make sure that the community is involved in the planning process and make sure that their concerns are being met, but they feel that they've been left out. And I think that's a recipe for failure. It really is. We're going about this the wrong way, and yet we all know that we got to deal with the fact that we cannot be depending on fossil fuels. We all know that. Everyone agrees to that. But we still got to be able to work together as a community to come forth with the proper solution. Now, does it include geothermal, expansion of geothermal? It may. Does it include expansion of other renewable energy? Absolutely. It needs to be. Because when we talk about, HELCO being so dependent on fossil fuels, we talk about all our eggs in one basket. We're talking about being renewable energy, 100% renewable by 2015. We're talking about having a geothermal plant between 200 and 500 megawatts. I mean, you cannot come up with that type of project without making sure that you got the community buy-in, let alone hearing people from outside of the Big Island said, the Big Island, we need the Big Island for geothermal energy, and we want to build a 1,000 megawatt plant. I'll tell you what people have told me, and I agree with them. The Big Island is not going to be the state's guinea pig for this. Right? You can't. Thank you. But, and we need to make sure that before we begin to expand, let's take care of our island first. Before we talk about, other running an underground cable to Maui or Kauai or Honolulu, let's take care of our problem here first. And sometimes I say this a lot, a lot of times you gotta take the apple and take a bite at a time. When you try to swallow the whole thing, that's when you get problems, And that's when you get community come forward, and all of a sudden it becomes an all or nothing. And you know what? We created that. And that's our kuleana. So we need to reverse that, because we really need to seriously have dialogue on this issue, ladies and gentlemen. And that includes talking about, geothermal and other means of renewable energy. And that's why we will begin, as I mentioned to Mr. Patrici, that we should have dialogue, whereas we did have the working group come forward. They gave us a presentation. Of course, we had HELCO, and we have another presentation coming up. But we also need to have those that have concerns to have that avenue before the county council, so that all of these things can be ironed out. Okay, but and of course the Native Hawaiian issue, the First Amendment right, that needs to be ironed out as well. So, Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate you bringing this forward and having this dialogue. But we need to realize if we don't get the community together, we're going to divide this community in a way that is not going to be pretty. So let's try to work together on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yagong. Ms. Smart, followed by Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I'm just going to be real brief. I have the date for everyone. So the VOG Task Force meeting, the next meeting is June 14th at the Pahoa Community Center at 5:30 p.m. Again, that is June 14th at the Pahoa Community Center at 5:30 p.m. The specific purpose is to have the public come and tell us the experiences that they have with VOG in terms of health effects and other effects that they may notice. So please come, June 14th, Pahoa Community Center, 5:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martin. Ms. Ford?
Thank you. You know, over the lunch hour, I was thinking about some of the testimony, and I would like to have one of the ladies, yeah, in a blue shirt, would you come forward, please? I need to ask a question because I wasn't sure from your testimony. Please identify yourself into the microphone again.
My name is Aurora Martinovich. I live at 133997 Pu'uho Nua'ula, next to the PGV plant.
Thank you. I wasn't sure in my own mind if you are interested in being relocated. In other words, your property being purchased and you move someplace else where your health will improve, your family's health will improve. Are you interested in that?
I applied to the county planning 4 years and 1 month ago. Within their procedures, there's 3 rules. That you have your house before PGV had their permit, which I have. That you're within 1 mile, which I'm the closest. And that you have a desire to relocate. Within the county planning procedures for relocation, they were to be sending out an appraiser within 60 days. They have not done that to this point. They've sent out an investigation team to go through my home with a fine-tooth comb, and it's cost me $5,000 to get new permits. We had open permits, we closed, and to this day they still have not come up with a document. They've said they've lost. They couldn't find the old files. They don't remember how it was done. It cost me $250 worth of copies I pulled from their files 4 years ago because I didn't understand why I wasn't relocated. I recently gave them those purchase documents and we're still waiting to be relocated. And while I'd like to say I think that everybody that's around geothermal should be allowed to relocate, not just those who have their permit, because those people who've moved in since are getting gas today. So yes, I have asked for relocation.
Thank you for explaining that. Mr. Chairman, I think we need an agenda item that will put the relocation, the geothermal relocation fund back on the agenda for discussion, and have Ms. Leadhead Todd, who's the Director of Planning, come in here and explain why 4+ years after this application, these people are still living the closest to that plant. And we may need to change the code. I don't know. That's another issue. But I think we need to get this on the agenda. If you wouldn't mind doing that for your committee, is that possible? It's well, right now the geothermal's under you, right? So wouldn't the geothermal fund be under planning or here?
That'll be the chairman's discretion.
Your discretion, sir. What would you like?
The geothermal relocation fund falls under the planning department.
So we should go under Mr. Hoffman. Excuse me, Mr. Yoshimoto.
Yeah, my preference would be that it stay under planning.
Okay, I have no problem. Mr. Hoffman, would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. In the meantime, I'm not quite sure how to go about this. We need to talk to Ms. Leadhead Todd and find out what is going on. This is, well, I don't want to go there. Thank you for coming. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I offer one more solution? I wish geothermal wasn't there, but it is. There's also a fund called the Asset Fund that is for mitigation purposes. It has over $2 million in it. We have been, the county put together a investigative report on geothermal, and one of those recommendations was for a Puna air monitoring program. So I would love to work with this to see that come to fruition, to guarantee the safety of the people, or at least know what we're dealing with.
Thank you for coming forward. I'm sorry I had to call you up personally and ask you about this again. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Mr. Gung, you have your light on, or no? Ms. Martin, did you want to go on again, or?
Yes, thank you to Gwen in Pahoa and to Jenny. The date of the VOG task force meeting, I guess, has been changed in the meantime, and I did not get the notice. So I want to make sure to give you the correct information this time. It is June 12th, Tuesday at 5 p.m. I apologize for that. It is June 12th, 5 p.m. Thank you, Gwen.
Same location.
Same location.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martin. I don't. Go ahead, Mr. Yugo.
And I just wanted to, one last thing in all fairness to Mr. Ignacio. The comments that I've made in regards to the 1,000 mega, it's not a proposal of HELCO at all. You know, and I want to make that clear because I want to make sure that that is not something that is left hanging out there. You know, the request for proposal, Mr. Ignacio, was 50 megawatts, is correct?
We're looking at up to 50.
Up to 50 megawatts. I just want to make sure I put that out there. Thank you.
Could I comment on the planning process? At least for electrical energy, we have an integrated resource planning process. And just recently, this year, the Public Utilities Commission has opened up a docket to go through another planning cycle for all three Hawaiian electric utilities at the same time. In the past, they would have been done independently, but in this particular cycle, all three Hawaiian electric utilities will go through the planning process at the same time. That docket has been opened up. So, you know, many of the concerns you have about public input can be addressed through that docket because it is a public process, the planning process. The plan that we're operating on did indicate additional geothermal in the year 2022. What we're doing with this RFP is accelerating that additional geothermal energy much sooner and a larger amount than what's in our adopted plan.
Okay, thank you, council members. Mr. Ignacio, anything else you wanted to add? Or
I just want to thank all of you for this opportunity to speak to you and brief you on the issues that recent issues facing our company.
Thank you, Mr. Ignacio. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pelago, any final comments?
Very briefly, sir, I wish to thank again President Ignacio for his work and to remind us all that he has done very well in protecting his corporation, but he represents private industry. So I think we're laying and layering too much responsibility and blame on him. I think he did well for his company. What I am saying is it falls on us, this county council, to protect the public interest. That is our job. And I think we should further these types of discussion and begin to resolve and connect up the community with private industry using our government venue to further that cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pelago. Mr. Clerk, on the motion to file.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Hoffman.
Aye.
Mr. Ikeda.
Aye.
Mr. Pelago.
Aye.
Ms. Smart.
Aye.
Mr. Yagala.
Aye.
Chair Yoshimoto.
Aye.
Chair Yoshimoto, you have 7 ayes.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The motion passes. Next on the agenda, we have Communication 651, presentation by Patricia K. Brandt, CEO, Innovations Development Group, Inc., from Chairperson Dominic Igon, dated May 23rd, 2012, stating that a presentation will be made by Ms. Brandt regarding renewable energy resources of indigenous people. Mr. Igon, would you like to make the motion?